Hi, my name is Thomas, and I'm here to share my NDE near-death experience. It's pretty short. Uh, you can take it or leave it, and I have ideas about what I did see. It starts off tragic and ends up glorious, but essentially, I was 24 years old. I'm 57 now, and I was using cocaine, and I didn't understand the dynamics or what I was doing, and I ended up using a very large amount in a very short period of time. And I stood up, walked across the room, stood in front of the TV. I was going to change a VCR tape. And the next thing that I know, I had sudden cardiac arrest, which is not uncommon when you're dealing with cocaine overdoses. And I was by myself. There was no one to call for an ambulance or paramedic or fire or police or anything. And I remember falling into like a darkness, and I remember hitting the part of my body on a table and knocking over a brass urn and landing on the floor, and everything ended up going black at that point. And some period of time passed. I don't know if it was just seconds, minutes, whatever. I don't know, but I was allowed to see some things with where I was laying on the ground. My awareness was outside of where my body was present. And I wasn't really able to see much at that point, because when I looked left to right, it was just darkness, but I could tell that I was still inside of the apartment where I was living. And the next thing that I remember, and part of this I'm having to speculate on, because at some point my body had to have been moved from the floor, and I was put onto the couch opposite of the side of the couch that I was actually sitting on when I stood up to go across the room. And I remember seeing two, I don't know if I could call them spirits or humans, or how I would exactly describe it, but I'll just start with the first, what I was able to see or allowed to see while I was outside of my body. And there was a man who was Caucasian. He was older, and he had very little hair, if any. I couldn't really remember, maybe some back here, but on the top of his head he had a white cap, and it was like a skull cap. It was flat on his head, and then from the neck down to his, I couldn't really see his feet, but from the neck down he was in a white robe. And he looked vaguely familiar to me, and in retrospect, the only person that I can think of that it might have been, based on what I remember seeing, is St. John Paul II, the former Pope. He's the only person that I remember thinking that that might be at the time. And he was still alive when I was 24 years old. And that relates to a other saint called Padre Pio, who had what's called bilocation, and that may have been exactly what happened with John Paul II at the time. But then I looked to my left, his right, and I saw something that was very unexpected and was actually surprising. But there was another man, and I could see him standing as well, and he had a black robe on, but he had a hood that covered his entire head, and he had long sleeves that were black, and the robe went all the way down to his feet. Now, when I looked at him, I could actually discern his hands coming out of the end of the sleeve. And I also peered down. I was allowed to see this. I had no real, I didn't feel like I was controlling anything. I was just allowed to see it. And when I looked down, I could see bare feet. And when I looked at his hands, I could see bare hands. But the thing is, when I looked at his hands, I could see this kind of, human attribute with the veins in the hands, and it had flesh. But they were as white as you could possibly imagine the color white being. And when I peered towards the face, I saw no face, no head, no nothing, but the hood was still over the head. And when I looked inside of the hood, there was nothing. And it really was like, whoa, I don't know what I'm seeing, but wow. And when I looked at his feet were bare, and I could tell they were as white as you could possibly imagine white being. They weren't blinding or anything. And there was a different attribute about these two that would not be typical when you look at another human in this realm, which is they were semi-translucent, where you were not seeing like exactly a solid human or a solid image. It's I hate to use this reference, but so many people have seen this movie. It's very much like in the movie Star Wars, where R2, he puts a video out so you could see the princess. And it was almost like that, where it was semi-translucent and you could see. So the next thing I remember seeing is that I had been placed on the couch, my body was, and then my two hands were brought together like this by the one that was dressed in the white vestments or robe or whatever you want to call it. He put my hands together like this. And then he proceeded to put his hands, he laid both of his hands on top of my hands. Okay. Then the one that was in the black robe, he walked behind the man in the white robe, and he then placed his hands on top of the hands that had already been placed on top of my hands. And right at that moment, I was brought back from the dead and put back into my body. That's what happened. And at the time, I had no real understanding of what it was that I was seeing or how I could have seen it, what the purpose was. But immediately when I became aware of being alive again, I threw away the cocaine and drugs and porn and just threw it out the window. And it was a complete wake-up call. I had no idea I was going to die. I had no intent to die. I overindulged in, it killed me. Anyway, as I was saying, I was ignorant of the facts of the Bible, had just a, Catholic education, which was not that great because we didn't study the Bible tremendously. And so I didn't really understand the Gospels. And I now, after spending 3+ years reading the Gospels, studying the Scriptures and Ephesians and Corinthians and Psalms and Genesis. I mean, I'm not a Bible expert or anything, but here's what I learned. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, I am the resurrection. And when he placed his hands on people in the Bible, he brought people back from the dead. He also says in the Gospel of John that no one has seen the face of God except for the Son of Man. He's talking about himself, God Jesus. And what I saw was my resurrection, just like in the Gospel of John with his dear friend Lazarus. He is the resurrection. And it's all true. And I didn't know this until 2009 when I had a cardiac event. And I don't know if I died, but I was definitely judged. And I was told that I'm going to hell because I resumed all that nonsense with the porn and all my marriage and everything else got messed up. And I was told I was shaking violently and sweat. I was sitting on the end of my bed because something terrible just happened and I couldn't really bear it. And I just complete and utter despair. And the next thing I know, I'm started shaking violently and sweat just starts pouring out of me like, I don't even know how it was like the biggest drops of rain that you've ever seen just coming out of my whole body. And the next thing that I knew is that I was being judged. Now, I was told that I'm going to hell. And I was absolutely shocked. It's not because of what I believed in terms of Jesus, because I didn't know him in 2009 either. I was shocked because I said, I'm not a bad person. I haven't ever killed anyone. And then I see like this horizontal movie or script or something unfold right in front of my eyes. And the next thing I knew, it zoomed in to this behavior. And what he showed me is true. And I didn't see it through my eyes. I saw it through his eyes. And it wasn't just seeing it, it was understanding it and feeling his judgment. And it was just. And it was true. And it was more than just one thing. It was like an instantaneous extraction of how he was judging me. And I couldn't, there was no denying any of it. It was all true. And it really, I was just profoundly and terrified. And I started begging. I said, please give me another chance. And then I was told that you're just delaying the inevitable. And I was just, I couldn't believe that I was literally getting condemned right then and there. And I started begging even more. And I said, please, please give me another chance. And then I said, obviously, I did not understand what I was doing. I didn't get it. And right as I said those words, I was sitting on the end of the bed and I was impelled down to my knees and was essentially overcome with the most unfathomable mercy and forgiveness and love and compassion. He knew what happened to me growing up, and he knew what led me to it. And he showed me what he thinks. I'd never felt any love like that. It was so powerful. It was almost like a punishing love. Like it was so profound and overwhelming, I could hardly even bear it. So I said, please, if we're going to continue this, can you please give me some relief? I was so overwhelmed. And then he told me something about that had just happened in my life. And he, for the lack of better words, kind of joked about it. And it made me chuckle. And it gave me like almost instantaneous relief. I'm going to skip over some of this stuff. It's just too personal. That doesn't really help much. It was related to me about my relationships. But he told me that as a penance, that I would go through something very painful and difficult with my wife. And he showed me a vision of me in the future not working. He showed me a vision of me in the future alone. And he showed me image or something that I'm not, it was kind of vague, but somehow ministering to people. I was given instruction at that point. Well, actually, let me go back. Before this, I just simply said, "Can I ask a question?" And I got no answer. So I said, "Okay." And my first question was, "Is Jesus for real?" And the answer that I got was yes. Then I said, "Is the Bible for real? I mean, is it right?" And then I was told yes again. But then he added, "You don't need to understand all of that right now. What you need to understand is what's happening right now is real." But then he said, "I will show you." Then he told me how to treat my wife. I needed to be more patient. I needed to be more respectful. I need to be more compassionate. I need to be more forgiving and understanding. All of this has been written down in a book because it was so powerful. Nothing had ever happened like this in my life. He showed me a vision of my parents, and he reminded me about them dying. One of my parents has died since then, and my mom's well aged, and there's no way of knowing what her, lifespan's going to be. Anyway, all of that has happened. My wife divorced me after 25 years of being married. And it is the most painful, difficult thing I've ever experienced in my life because I loved her so much. This was after I returned to the church, went to confession, received the sacraments of the Holy Eucharist. And at that one of the masses I started attending again on a regular basis, a man got up after Mass was over and mentioned that there was going to be a Bible study. And I thought to myself, well, maybe this is meant for me because Jesus said he would show me. And in that 3 years, I became very aware of the existence of Jesus and the historicity that is well documented about Jesus, and he is a real person that actually existed. And I spent approximately 3+ years doing serious Bible study that was done by Catholic theologians, PhDs. And everything that I experienced in those two things that happened in my life when I was 24 years old and in 2009 lined up exactly with what the Bible says. No variation whatsoever. He also, after he told me what I needed to do to treat my wife, I reformed my marriage, got rid of everything. No porn, no masturbation, no nothing. for years, and I'd never been happier in my life and never loved her more than I experienced when I followed the teachings of the church, got rid of the birth control, returned to the sacraments, started praying the rosary, having mystical experiences, hearing Jesus speak to me. And we made it as far as celebrating our 25th anniversary in Rome and renewed our vows. And after that, everything went completely nuts. And all of the things that I was shown and told have happened. I am now disabled. I don't work. As I said, I was divorced after the 25 years. I've been on my own for 7 years. I've been on the streets. I was the president of an IT company for 25 years. Went from having virtually anything that I needed or wanted in my life to having virtually nothing in my life. And he told me this was going to happen. I begged for mercy, and he gave it to me. He gave me a penance. And he said that he wanted me to do music, to continue my interest in the music. He said it is good. And I have no formal training. I'm not a musician or anything like that. But I had just bought a keyboard that was just incredible, professional recording system. And it was because I was very blessed with my business. And that 25 years all happened after he raised me, and I was given everything that I ever wanted. And I had this keyboard, and I had only been able to do one song, and I don't know where that song came from, and I still can't play it to this day. I was just told to go sit down at the keyboard, hit the record button, and I played a song that I've never heard before and still can't play to this day. Let's skip forward to 2013. I was able to record, I believe, 7 or 9 songs, I can't remember which it is, using that keyboard. And the music that I was given was all spiritual and invariably referred to Jesus. And I've recorded it. I'm not perfect, but it came out in a way that is understandable and usable. And I've had people listen to it and just start crying. It's pretty moving music. And I have no idea how I'm able to even do it sometimes. And thank God I only have one recording of each of the songs that I worked on, and none of them are perfect. There's mistakes and so on. But I was told towards the end of this encounter in 2009, after he told me to continue the music, he said, "You must tell people what has happened here." And I haven't done that. And here I am. That 7 years put me through hell. I've never experienced anything like that, and the betrayal that I experienced from my ex. And having my child taken away from me for years for no good reason. And losing all my money, losing all my property, losing my housing, being on the street, getting beaten up, being robbed, curb stomped, laying in the rain on the sidewalk. It's been hell. And the reason I'm now motivated to share all this with you is because I did fall back into those nasty habits. I was using it for painkiller. The porn. And I was alone, and I hated it. And one day, I kept praying Hail Marys and Our Fathers. I didn't go to Mass. I didn't receive the Eucharist. I was divorced. I had no idea how to proceed, lost my faith because everything went to hell. So, after COVID started, everybody starts online intimating that maybe we're in the end times, and more people started having prophetic dreams. And I ran across a man online, Dr. Taylor Marshall, and I took one of his Revelations Bible studies, and it was pretty intense. And the promise of that book in the Bible is that anyone that hears it or reads it will receive special blessings or graces. I can't recall the exact wording. And it wasn't too much longer after that I was like, I'm done with this porn nonsense. I have to get rid of it out of my life. It is killing me. It's what I was shown, not the porn, but the behavior because of the porn back in 2009. And I became distraught. I was just angry. And I was reading about other people struggling with this exact same issue big time. And they were distraught. They didn't want to lose their salvation. And since I know what salvation looks like now, with the Eucharist and Jesus and the Holy Spirit and God the Father, Hail Mary, Holy Mother, all of it is real. And I'm very distraught at this point. And I started crying. I just started crying. I had it. And I cried out to Jesus. And I said, please do not abandon me. And the next thing that I know is I hear a voice. And the voice says to me, because you have believed in me. And I was instantaneously transformed because I had so many doubts. And I'd lost my faith, and he came to me right then and told me, because you believed in me, that he's got me. And then I was shown a very hard to see vision. And it started off almost like I was looking through a pipe or a tunnel or something. But I could see what was happening towards the end of the tunnel, and it just kept zooming in, and it was Jesus Christ on the crucifix. And he was being murdered. And he had his head down, and this vision kind of moved towards his face, and I could see blood just coming down his face. And I was crying. And he lifted his head, like, and he started crying out. And I started crying even more. And he lifted his head higher and cried out even harder. And he was showing me basically a couple of things, that he was taking this penalty of mine and all the stuff that I had done in the last 7 years. And he was taking it right then and there for me. I was transfixed back into his crucifixion. And I felt really guilty. It was beautiful to receive that kind of, I don't even know what the right word is, demonstration or love or compassion, to show me he did this and he took my sins. He paid the price. So once that vision was over, I then heard him say these two things to me. He said, "I will restore you." And then he repeated himself and said, "I will restore you." And he has. He's giving me back everything I ever wanted when I was in the sacraments, happy and in love with Jesus. And he's given it all back. That's my testimony. God bless you all.